But this is something extremely important to establish. The Sentry's power varies depending on his mental stability. This makes him go from Herald level to destroying Yggdrasil, Strange, and Eternity. Some people might argue this is an unquantifiable difference in strength, as we can't directly measure his stability, but we can use his showings within each of these instances as an underlying standard to distinguish between a stable and an unstable Sentry. Presuming the page itself doesn't make that clear, even if Sentry were to be mentally stable at any point in time, we still have to take into consideration him holding back a lot for ethical and collateral purposes. Another thing to take into consideration is his agoraphobia. This is the main cause of him staying outside of fights. The only thing he fears more than the void is his own power, as we've seen in World War Hulk. This also explains why when he does act, he doesn't expend the energies he's actually capable of expending, simply a sufficient amount to dispose of any threat. A Sentry has demonstrated to completely embarrass Dr. Doom and absolutely shred through his force fields, with the latter being the actual feat. It is then repeated again that Sentry could do the exact same thing with no pressure in the following issue. He repeated twice to make it clear, literally from Iron Man, who wouldn't underestimate Vic Von Doom. The reasons this is so impressive is because his force fields were directly capable of shielding against and absorbing the energies of a mad celestial, making him survive an attack which completely embarrassed Galactus. They were completely unscathed by Captain Britain, who at that point was operating on a multiversal / omniversal level. He survived a direct blast from the IG, which is capable of tanking attacks from a Galactus who had the capability of destroying all realities, known and unknown, and all of time within a single thought. The Cosmic Cube was stated to be a fraction of Galactus's power too. They were stated to be completely superior to Susan's force fields, which were capable of withstanding attacks from the Celestials on 2 different instances. We know her force fields also depend on her mental prowess as well. At the very least, we know at her peak she could withstand an incursion too. In issue 383, Sorcerer Supreme Loki was stated to be a threat to the entire magical realm and the entirety of the multiverse by Stefan and Sentry. This is important because both Yggdrasil Strange, Void / Sentry have been repeatedly shown to be above him within the span of these 3 issues. Yggdrasil Strange was stated to be at his absolute peak, far superior to any other incarnation and form of Strange, with him being a god of magic relative to them simply being sorceresses, and him being much more. We can deduce the statement of more magic that I have ever known to mean 2 things. The statement is impersonal and external, relating to Strange's general observations. This would yield insanely, really, just crazy high results, since we could conclude Yggdrasil Strange was superior to quite literally any foe he faced before, not only his previous incarnations, and any form of those foes too. This statement is personal and internal, relating to Strange's observations, relating to his past selves, which would still yield insane results considering the innumerable amps Strange has gotten throughout the runs. This is the same Strange who Loki fought. Another thing to note is that Loki was still God of Stories at this point. God of Stories Loki has phenomenal feats, but to make it simple, this is not just Loki plus his Sorcerer Supreme mantle fighting. This is Loki plus Sorcerer Supreme plus God of Stories. While the fight was evidently Strange having the upper hand, we ought not ignore the contextual narrative implications we get throughout the fight, as we see both on panel and dialogue, which we can inductively reason off. Loki was able to contend with the Strange, directly tanking a blast, seemingly swapping hands with him in a last panel, and not being afraid of Strange being amped by Yggdrasil, and still willing to fight. While Loki is egotistical, he has another predicate which is even more dominant, which is his intellect. He knows when to fight or when to utilize his cunningness, and we can already tell the approach he took here. So based off this, we can conclude that Sorcerer Supreme, God of Stories Loki, is capable of contending with Yggdrasil Strange to some extent. Another thing to take into consideration is that Sentry, who was quite literally asleep, acted as a conduit for Yggdrasil Strange's magic, pretty much his power. This is self-explanatory and does not require anything else. You might be wondering, why is it so important to establish this Loki to be so powerful? It's because the Void completely embarrassed the same Loki, as well as Doctor Strange, and Sentry was capable of damaging the Void and holding it off. So that's absolutely insane scaling, some really insane scaling right there. We've also seen Sentry contain the energies of a disabled cosmic cube in his earlier years. Sentry has obviously gotten stronger, far more stronger since then. Absorbing Man, who can absorb the powers of a cosmic cube, Odin, Galactus, power which can destroy Scarlet Witch, Wiccan, and Dormammu, couldn't handle Sentry giving him all his power and basically collapsed on himself. Even with a mere fraction, he literally flat out states he thinks Sentry is God himself with these powers, which is absolutely insane. Like, not even the Absorbing Man could handle such power from Sentry. So you're probably wondering, what about Merge Sentry? Well, let's talk about him. For those who don't know, Reynolds finally decided to embrace the nature of his other half for the first time, rather than continue to fight its warring parts. This resulted in the creation of Merge Sentry. Speaking of Billy, aka Scout, Merge Sentry snapped his neck. Keep in mind, Scout became the new Sentry and was previously overpowering the original Sentry before he became whole. So right there and there, got some crazy scaling for Sentry. It's just really good scaling for Sentry. Now for speed, it's pretty self-explanatory. Scaling wise, Sentry should easily have irrelevant speed naturally, due to the nature of him being at such a high level of AP. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the Sentry's hacks and abilities and all that good stuff. So for starters, Sentry has been able to manipulate matter and molecules. We've seen Sentry use this to stop Mjolnir and drop it to the ground. I think it would be also a good idea to talk about the fight between Molecule Man and Sentry. The fight has caused a lot of controversy, with many people labeling it as plot-induced stupidity or coming up with their own theories. We do know that the Sentry was killed twice by Molecule Man before realizing how to use his powers. When he does have Molecule Man on the ropes, he has to ask the more experienced Molecule Man to return everything back to normal, which shows that Sentry was a novice at using this type of power. So was the fight plot-induced stupidity? Absolutely not, because there is actually forgotten context behind this fight. So let's talk a little bit about Molecule Man in this situation. Molecule Man during the time was not inherently depowered. However, there is a difference between being depowered and being weakened. Many writers have stated Molecule Man was not depowered, but they did not state that he was not weakened. During Dark Avengers, Molecule Man was weakened, similar to the Sentry. Owen's powers resolve around the state of his mind. We know during the arc of Dark Avengers that Molecule Man was feeling lonely and whatnot. So while this feat shouldn't inherently be looked at as an AP feat for Sentry, it's still useful when it comes to his ability to manipulate molecules and matter. So moving on, Sentry has demonstrated phenomenal sensory capabilities. For example, Sentry is capable of hearing a butterfly sneeze in Africa while he himself is in New York. Sentry can track people by sensing their aura. Sentry is capable of feeling Exetar's energy from the White Hot Room, which is far beyond the far shore. Another one of Sentry's iconic hacks is his potent telepathic capabilities and mental prowess. We've seen Sentry telepathically talk to Charles Xavier. Even Emma Frost and Charles Xavier had to combine their efforts to invade Sentry's mind, and even then, Emma Frost only had access to the White Room she built inside of Sentry's mind. Shortly after she was inside, the Void attacked her and forced her to stay inside her diamond form to avoid being killed by the Void. Oh, and let's not forget how Sentry is capable of manipulating the emotions of his opponent if necessary. Superman himself has fought Darkseid. This very same Darkseid wielded the anti-life equation in his possession during the fight, and Superman took attacks from him, and Superman also boxed up this Darkseid, which is very impressive. Superman was strong enough to hold up the heavens for a long period of time. Superman was able to endure and take the combined force of full power Apex Lex, Brainiac, Leviathan, and UV Sinestro's attack. When Lex Luthor hijacked and took control of Superman's body, he notes that every step he took, it was shaking realms inside the God Sphere. In Dark Knight's death metal, while Superman was weakened, he casually one-shots a version of Batman who had Darkseid's powers. But what makes this feat even more impressive is that it was heavily implied that Superman would need to be weakened for the anti-life equation to take over his body in the first place. So these feats are very impressive, easily creation level feats. There are some more creation level feats for Superman. So Superman has fought against Lex Luthor, who's stated to be stronger than the entire Dark Army combined, which is very impressive. The World Forger also was able to trap Superman in a galaxy that was stated there was just enough sunlight to basically maintain Superman's normal level of power. But then we literally see Batman move these suns away, which severely weakened Superman. But then we literally see Superman get back to his normal level once he stopped holding back. Then he started absorbing more suns, and then he was literally able to just one-shot the World Forger. So that's also another impressive feat. This occurred in the Justice League 2018 run as well. So that's also a legit feat for Superman too. We are all aware, well, I hope we're all aware, there's some people that don't understand that Rebirth Superman is also a combination of like Post-Crisis and New 52. So there's feats that happen in New 52 as well, and in Post-Crisis they also have creation level stuff in there too. So I'm going to mention some things. Now, we've seen in New 52 where Superman was able to confront the Phantom Stranger, and Superman demonstrates he's able to physically damage Phantom Stranger. Both New 52, Phantom Stranger, and Spectre do battle with each other, and if they had basically continued to fight each other, they would have destroyed creation. Superman was able to fight these angel creatures that kill fifth dimensional imps. Superman then devises a plan to open a portal to the fifth dimension so that they can attack the fifth dimensional beings all at once. He then uses himself as a power connector to use the device and takes the energy that gets rid of them, which is also another creation level feat for Superman. And also at the start of Rebirth, Superman was also able to face off against like Doomsday. Superman stops holding back against Doomsday and then literally beats the breakout of Doomsday, literally beats him up very badly. And this very same Doomsday is literally capable of breaking out of the Phantom Zone and is also able to beat up Darkseid too. Now, this is a controversial one, but after doing some more research and going over it with my team, I'm pretty confident, and it's pretty safe to say with all the feats that Superman has shown, that Superman one-shotting Barbatos is a valid feat, because even though Barbatos was chained up, we can't use that to assume that his power was weaker, and even though he was defenseless, that wouldn't inherently mean his durability would be worse, because if he has feats like scaling to the World Forger, then his durability would at least need to be in that same ballpark. And if Superman himself wasn't in the same ballpark, then he wouldn't have been able to basically affect Barbatos, let alone knock him out. So this feat would further support Superman scaling to the World Forger regardless. And in fact, considering that Superman has already shown creation level feats against characters who are vastly above Barbatos, just makes the feat even more sound. So that's another thing I wanted to throw in too. And lastly, to wrap up AP, Superman's heat vision was able to clash with Great Darkness Amp Darkseid and his Omega Beams. So that's another solid creation level feat right there. Alright, so that's going to round up Superman's AP. I'm going to go ahead and move over to speed, and I'm going to talk about some more about Superman, talk about some hacks, resistances, etc, etc. Superman kept pace with Jay Garrick and Wally West while they were chasing the Reverse Flash to the past. Wally West himself has legit ran to the 853rd century. We've also seen Superman outpace reality blitzing missiles that was sterilizing the continuum, and Superman can move inside the source where there is no direction. So Superman has his heat vision, it can negate intangibility, and it affects people on a molecular level. Superman also can freeze people with his ice breath, and can also create a dust storm with his breath. Superman has enhanced senses and hearing. He is able to hear someone in a crowd of 11 million via hearing their heartbeat. He can also tell what materials you are wearing based off the noise and clothing that it makes, such as knowing 10 was wearing Kevlar, Superman can smell your tears. He also has microscopic vision, being able to see subatomic particles. Superman can also see spirits, so he has spiritual awareness. So that's going to round up those feats for Superman. I'm going to go ahead and move on to his resistances. Superman is able to survive in a cosmic storm which affects you on an atomic level. Superman has survived attacks from Blackrock, who was piercing him on a subatomic level. Superman is able to survive and push on after taking a magical arrow to his soul, which was inducing fear and hopelessness, and Superman was able to pull through. Superman is able to resist Eclipso's mental influence. Superman is protected by invulnerable aura. Superman's willpower helps him resist and adapt to people and hexes. He can push himself with his willpower, and Superman also uses his willpower to power up a Green Lantern beam by 20%. Superman also has his Type 3 and conceptual Type 8 immortality. He can heal from physical injuries, and Superman's story will not allow Superman to die or be in very rough situations. He will continue to come back, and as long as hope exists, Superman will come back. So, to add on for more additional resistances, so concepts like weight, distance, temperature, and space-time have largely lost meaning to Superman. Superman literally has resistance against like BFR. Not even Lex Luthor can get rid of him, so things like that won't work on him anymore. Superman and Batman have both shown to resist plot hacks from Mr. Nobody, so both these combatants have really good plot hacks resistances. Superman was never fooled by the illusion that Pariah had put him in the dream worlds, and he's literally able to absorb his own world. Dr. Manhattan states that no matter how many times Superman's existence is attacked or changed, he will survive, and Superman has shown before that he is completely fine against like existence erasure. He has good resistances against conceptual erasure, just due to how fundamental Superman is. Captain Forrest here, and in today's video I'm going to be going over both these combatants to see who would win more often not in a cross-verse situation. Sentry from Marvel versus Superman from DC Comics. If you guys are new to my channel, consider leaving a like, comment down below, and of course subscribe for the content. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and give a summary of both these characters and their scaling, and then once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead, jump over, chop it up from there, and give my thoughts near the end of the video. Okay, so that's going to round up both these combatants. I'm going to go ahead, give my thoughts on who I think wins more often than not in a cross-verse situation. And when we look at both their scaling, Sentry's got some really good scaling, Superman has some really good scaling too. Personally, I still lean with Superman. I think Superman has better transcendences and better feats overall, so I think he would take AP a lot more in comparison to Sentry. Now when we look at speed, could make an argument for Sentry being relative to Superman in speed. However, I do lean a little bit more so as Superman in the speed department. I think he definitely has more speed feats in comparison to Sentry, and the feats in DC when it comes to speed is very good. But anyway, I'm going to give it to Superman in terms of like AP and speed. Now when we look at things in terms of like hacks and abilities, Superman is going to resist all of Sentry's abilities. He's going to resist anything that Sentry tries to perform on Superman. Superman has just way too many resistances. Superman's a monster, bro. Like, he'd literally resist all of Sentry's stuff. Now, Sentry's kind of hard to take down due to his regenerative abilities. A really good solid win con for Superman would to literally just incapacitate him. So I definitely see them scrapping. They're going to start throwing hands. Sentry, we know how he works, especially if he's, you know, stable, he's within his right mind and his level head. He's definitely going to fight more focused and he's not going to be hindered with his unstableness. So personally, I think they're going to go back and forth, and once Superman starts to, you know, reach up the levels, he's going to start to like slowly not suppress himself. When it gets to that state, I think Superman's just going to completely just KO him, take out Sentry, and I think that's just going to be pretty much the conclusion of that fight. So more often than not, I gotta give this to Superman. I say moderate to maybe a little bit more difficulty. I think Sentry is going to be a little bit hard to take down due to what he has, but ultimately Superman does have the means necessary to take down Sentry. But I definitely don't think this fight is a stomp in any capacity. It is kind of competitive. But anyway, that's my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment down below, and let me hear your thoughts down in the comment section. It's been real. I'll see you guys in the next one.